In the heart of the Apache lands, 13 warriors stood ready, each one forged by battle, each one believing destiny belonged to him. But when the chief's daughter raised her hand, she didn't point to power. She pointed to a stranger, a scarred cowboy, weary and alone. That single choice would shake the mountains and change the meaning of strength forever. Part 1. The Choice That Broke Tradition. The valley of Shadowpeak shimmered beneath the noon. Sunday 13 warriors stood in a perfect circle, bodies carved by battle, skin glistening with sweat, eyes fixed on the daughter of their chief. The choosing ceremony had come. By dusk, Elara would select her husband from among them, and the valley would remember her choice for generations. But Elara's gaze wasn't on the warriors. Across the crowd, half hidden in the dust near his horse, stood a stranger, a cowboy with a lean frame, sunburnt skin, and a scarred left hand burned long ago in a fire. Silas Boone had come only to trade. He wasn't meant to witness this moment, let alone be a part of it. He had every reason to leave, and yet something, her stillness, perhaps, or the strange quiet that fell when their eyes met, kept him rooted where he stood. Her father, Chief Rokan, raised his hand. The crowd stilled. "My daughter will choose," he said, his deep voice carrying over the drums. "One man will walk beside her. One man will become Shadowpeak's blood." Kalen, the mightiest warrior, stepped forward slightly, already wearing the confidence of a victor. He was everything the others weren't: immense, calm, deadly. Around him, the wind itself seemed to bow. Elara's hand trembled once, then lifted. For an endless moment, she hovered over the line of warriors. Every man held his breath. And then her arm moved past them, past Kalen, past the circle, and pointed to the stranger in the dust. "Him," she said. "I choose him." The silence cracked like dry wood. Then came the uproar, shouts, disbelief, the grinding sound of pride breaking in men's throats. Kalen turned first, fury blazing in his eyes. He strode toward Silas, every step a warning. The cowboy didn't move. He had no weapon, no plan, only the foolish calm of a man too stunned to run. Kalen's fist came like thunder, catching him across the jaw and sending him sprawling to the ground. "Enough!" The chief's voice struck like a blade. 2 warriors held Kalen back. The clearing froze again. Rokan turned to his daughter. "Explain this." Elara's breath came steady. "6 moons ago I saw this man at the river. A calf was trapped in the mud. He climbed down alone, in water that could kill, and freed it with his bare hands. No one watched him. No one thanked him. He saved it anyway." Kalen spat into the dirt. "Weakness, kindness," she replied, her voice cutting clean through the air. "The kind our world forgets." Rokan's gaze darkened. "He is not Shadowpeak. He is not a warrior. He cannot protect you." "He already has," she said quietly. "He fought a river for a life that wasn't his to save. That is enough for me." The chief looked to Silas. "Do you accept her choice?" The project of the red of the Spard, and then Redderand of the Malin. Silas's jaw ached, his vision swam, and his instincts screamed to say no. The warrior's stares pressed on him like stones, but Elara's eyes held him dark, certain, unflinching. For the first time in years, someone was looking at him, not through him. "Yes," he said. Kalen roared, tearing free from the men who held him. But Rokan's command stopped him cold. The chief stepped forward, his voice calm but hard as flint. "Our law is sacred. When a woman chooses, her word is final. But tradition demands proof." He faced the outsider fully now. "If you would stand beside my daughter, you must earn that right as our ancestors decreed. You will face 3 trials: strength, courage, and will. Fail even one, and you leave these lands forever." Silas swayed where he stood. Blood ran from his split lip, dripping onto the dust at the chief's feet. Around them, the crowd watched, divided between awe and anger. Elara's face was unreadable, until Silas met her eyes again, and saw something waiting there, something that looked a lot like faith. Chief Rokan turned to the warriors. "Prepare the path. At dawn, we begin." The crowd parted. Kalen stood like a wall at the edge of the ring, his voice low enough for only Silas to hear. "You won't last the first trial, traitor. The mountain eats men stronger than you." Silas wiped the blood from his mouth, steadying his breath. "Then I'll make sure it chokes on me." Kalen smiled, a thin, cruel smile. "We'll see." The chief's hand rose one last time. 3 trials, he repeated. Strength, courage, will. The valley of Shadowpeak fell silent again. Above them, the cliffs of Crimson Peaks caught the dying light and turned the color of fire. Somewhere in that glow, a stranger had just rewritten the fate of a tribe and his own. Part 2. The Canyon of Bones. Second trial. The chief's voice cut through the tense quiet. "Tomorrow, at sunset, we will test courage. Each warrior must enter the Canyon of Dead Trees and retrieve a specific item I have placed there. You will go alone. You will go unarmed. You will return with proof, or you will not return at all." Murmurs rippled through the gathering. Silas had heard stories, whispers of the Canyon of Dead Trees, a place where animals ventured and never emerged, where the very trees stood bleached and skeletal, stripped of life by some unseen, inexplicable force. Even the battle-hardened warriors of Shadowpeak looked uneasy, their expressions a testament to the canyon's fearsome reputation. Kalen, his massive frame radiating fury, stepped forward. "And if the outsider fails to return?" he challenged, his voice cutting and clear. "If the canyon claims him?" Chief Rokan's face remained a mask, his gaze unreadable. "Then the spirits will have made the choice we could not," he stated, the finality in his tone chilling. Elara's hand, which had been resting lightly on Silas's arm after he returned from the cliff climb, tightened perceptibly. He felt the tremor in her fingers, understood the unspoken message. This wasn't merely a test of courage, it was designed to be his grave. Sunset painted the entrance to the Canyon of Dead Trees, in shades of blood and copper, casting long, grotesque shadows. Silas stood at the edge of the chasm, gazing into the gaping throat of the canyon. Before him stretched a labyrinth of skeletal trees, their gnarled branches reaching like clawed hands towards the darkening sky, resembling a scattering of bleached bones across the scarred earth. The 13 warriors, their faces grim but resolute, had already entered, disappearing one by one into the pale, silent forest. Kalen, ever the first, had moved with confidence, vanishing into the gloom without a backward glance. Now, only Silas remained outside. Chief Rokan approached, a small leather pouch held in his weathered hand. "Within this canyon," the chief began, his voice low against the rising wind, "I have placed 13 carved stones. Each bears a unique mark. You must find yours and return before the moon reaches its peak. 4 hours. No more." Silas swallowed, his throat dry. He studied the stark white trees that gave the canyon its ominous name. "What makes this place so dangerous?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Chief Rokan's expression remained stubbornly unreadable, his eyes reflecting the light. "Rattlesnakes nest in the hollows. Cougars hunt in the rocks above. The terrain itself is broken, treacherous, filled with hidden drops and unstable ground. Men have died here." He paused, his gaze fixed on Silas. "Some by animals, some by falling, some simply never return." The chief extended the pouch. Inside, Silas found a small, rough piece of charcoal and a scrap of coarse cloth. "Your stone bears this mark," Chief Rokan said, unfolding the cloth to reveal a simple but distinctive drawing. 3 parallel lines crossed by a diagonal. Silas tied the pouch to his belt. He looked once more at the canyon of dead trees, then stepped across the threshold into its chilling embrace. The moment he entered, the temperature plummeted. What little sunlight remained was swallowed by the dense, tangled canopy of dead branches, creating deep, shifting shadows that seemed to move on their own, playing cruel tricks on his weary eyes. His worn boots crunched on brittle branches and shattered fragments of wood that carpeted the ground, a symphony of broken bones. The canyon floor was a disorienting maze, paths split and rejoined, weaving between clusters of white trunks that all looked identical. Within minutes, Silas's sense of direction was completely lost. The canyon walls rose steeply on both sides, blocking any view of the sky save for a narrow, darkening strip directly overhead. He understood, with a cold certainty, why men didn't return from this place. It was designed to swallow you whole, to absorb you into its silence and its decay. A sudden, dry, rasping sound froze him mid-step. 3 feet to his left, coiled in the hollow of a gnarled dead root, a rattlesnake watched him with flat, black, unblinking eyes. Its body, thick as his forearm, was patterned in browns and tans, invisible until it moved. The rattle continued its low, insistent warning, a sound that raised the hair on his neck. Silas backed away slowly, meticulously, never breaking eye contact with the reptile. His heel caught on a hidden branch, and he nearly stumbled. The snake's head rose, tracking his every subtle movement. He held his breath, forcing himself to remain calm, until he'd put a good 20 feet of distance between them. Then he turned and continued his cautious journey, deeper into the canyon's oppressive depths. The chief would not have scattered the stones randomly. They had to be hidden in specific, deliberate places. Silas began his methodical search, checking anywhere that offered natural shelter, under precarious overhangs, in the crooks of fallen trees, behind jagged rock formations. He found 3 stones that were not his own, each bearing a different, unfamiliar mark. Each time, he carefully memorized the symbol, then moved on, pushing deeper into the encroaching darkness. An hour passed, then 2. His hands, raw and bleeding from the cliff climb, were crisscrossed with fresh cuts and scrapes from moving sharp rocks and thorny branches. The shadows deepened, shifting from oppressive gray to impenetrable black. Somewhere high above, he heard the chilling scream of a cougar, a terrible sound that mimicked a woman's cry. It echoed off the canyon walls, reverberating, making it impossible to tell precisely where the predatory animal actually was. Then, through the gloom, he saw it. A small stone, wedged in a deep crack, at the base of a massive, impossibly ancient dead tree. He reached for it, fingers trembling slightly, and pulled it free. Turning it over in his hand, his eyes strained to make out the mark in the near darkness. 3 parallel lines, crossed by a diagonal. His mark, relief, flooded through him. But the respite was short-lived. Getting into this forsaken place had been grueling. Getting out, now that the last vestiges of light were fading, would be infinitely worse. He'd taken so many turns, twisted and doubled back so often, that he wasn't even certain which direction led back to the canyon's entrance. A sound reached him through the oppressive darkness. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, moving inexorably toward him through the dead forest. Silas gripped his carved stone, a cold comfort in his hand, and pressed himself flat against a tree trunk, barely breathing. Kalen emerged from the shadows, his own carved stone already clutched in his hand. The warrior stopped dead when he saw Silas, and a slow, chilling smile spread across his face, a predatory grin that promised pain. They were alone in the canyon, no witnesses, no rules, just 2 men, and the gathering, suffocating night. "You found your stone," Kalen said, his voice a soft, venomous rasp. A pity you won't make it back to show anyone. Silas's hand instinctively moved to his belt, searching for any weapon, anything at all. Nothing. Chief Rokan had been clear. No weapons allowed. He was utterly defenseless, alone with a warrior twice his size, in a place where bodies could vanish without a trace, and no one would dare ask questions. Kalen took a step forward, then another. His movements were unhurried, radiating confidence. "They'll find you in a week, maybe 2. The warrior continued, his voice laced with cruel satisfaction. "If the animals leave enough, everyone will assume you got lost. That the canyon claimed you, like it claims all weak men. And what of the Turna strayed and raid? And the bract of the stable? Chief Rokan will know," Silas said, backing up slowly, his heel finding the unforgiving edge of a hidden drop he hadn't noticed until that moment. "Nowhere left to go, will he?" Kalen's smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp in the gloom. "Or will he accept that you were never strong enough for his daughter? That nature simply corrected a mistake she made?" With a guttural roar, the warrior lunged. Silas threw himself sideways, rolling violently across the broken ground. Sharp, brittle branches tore at his shirt, scoring fresh cuts into his already abused skin. He scrambled to his feet, running, plunging deeper into the disorienting maze of dead trees. Behind him, Kalen's heavy footsteps pounded like war drums, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Silas's lungs burned, raw and aching. His legs, still weak and protesting from the morning's climb, threatened to give out beneath him. He couldn't outrun this man. He couldn't outfight him. The only advantage he possessed was sheer desperation and the faint, flickering hope that Kalen expected him to act like prey, to panic in a predictable way. He skidded to an abrupt halt at a place where 3 winding paths converged, forming a confusing nexus. Kalen's footsteps were getting closer, closer, thundering in his ears. Silas looked around frantically, his eyes darting through the oppressive darkness. Then he spotted what he needed. The rattlesnake's hollow. The very same one he'd passed earlier, etched into his memory by a distinctive, strangely bent tree standing beside it. He grabbed a long, sturdy branch that lay half-buried in the detritus of the canyon floor and jammed it hard into the hollow, disturbing the deadly occupant. Then he dove behind a cluster of jagged rocks, barely breathing. The snake exploded from its hiding place, rattling furiously, its thick body writhing across the path. It had been disturbed twice in one evening, and its fury was palpable. Just as Kalen rounded the corner at full, unthinking speed, his boot came down mere inches from the coiled, agitated body. The warrior saw the snake too late. It struck, fangs, long and needle-sharp, sank deep into his calf. Kalen roared, a sound of agony and shock, stumbling backward. He ripped the snake away, a thick, coiling rope of fury, and hurled it against a tree where it landed in a broken, thrashing heap. But the damage was done. Silas watched from his hiding place as Kalen dropped to one knee, breathing hard, his face contorting in a mask of intense pain. The warrior pulled his knife, its blade glinting wickedly in the faint moonlight, and cut a rough X across the bite mark, frantically trying to bleed out the venom. It wouldn't work, not with a snake of that size, not with that much potent poison already pumping through his blood. "You," Kalen gasped, his voice thick with pain and rage. "You did this. You times did this," Silas corrected quietly, stepping slowly from behind the rocks. His voice was steady, betraying none of the terror that still clawed at him. "I was leaving. You chose to hunt me." The warrior tried to stand, but his leg gave out, sending him crashing back to the ground. Sweat poured down his face, glistening in the moonlight. His breathing was becoming labored, each breath a painful struggle. Snake venom, insidious and merciless, was shutting down his body, muscle by muscle. Silas could have left him there, could have walked away, abandoned him to the canyon's indifferent embrace, letting it finish what Kalen had so readily started. Instead, he moved closer, staying just out of the warrior's reach. "Where's the exit?" he demanded. Kalen coughed, a dry, rattling sound that ended in a bitter laugh. "Why would I tell you? Because you're going to die if you stay here," Silas replied, his voice firm. "And maybe somewhere under all that hate, you'd rather live." The warrior studied him for a long, agonizing moment, his pain-filled eyes warring with fury. Finally, with a grunt of grudging concession, he pointed with his knife, the tip wavering slightly. "North. Follow the wall on your right. Don't deviate." Silas picked up a long, sturdy branch and, with his abused hands, broke it in half. He then tore strips from his own bloodied shirt to bind the pieces into a makeshift crutch. He extended it to Kalen. "Can you walk?" "I don't need your help," Kalen spat, defiance still clinging to his voice like a stubborn burr. "Yes, you do," Silas countered, his gaze unwavering. "And you're going to accept it. Because that's what separates us, Kalen. I save things that are trying to kill me." It took them nearly an hour to reach the canyon entrance. Kalen leaned heavily on Silas and the makeshift crutch, his face ashen with pain, his injured leg dragging uselessly. The other warriors were already there, their carved stones clutched in their hands, their expressions a mix of triumph and exhaustion. They rushed forward in alarm when they saw Kalen's condition, their voices rising in a cacophony of concern. Chief Rokan appeared, his eyes sweeping from his injured warrior to Silas, then back again, a new, complex expression beginning to dawn in their depths. "What happened?" he asked, his voice sharp with urgency. "Snake." Kalen ground out through gritted teeth, his pride clearly warring with the pain. "My fault, not his." The chief looked at Silas, and something profound shifted in his gaze. Not friendship, perhaps, but certainly a burgeoning respect. A recognition that this cowboy was far from what anyone had assumed him to be. He held out his hand. Silas placed the carved stone in it. "Second trial complete," Chief Rokan announced, his voice carrying the weight of his authority. Though his eyes lingered on Silas, then his tone hardened, echoing the ominous nature of the canyon. "Tomorrow, the final test. The test of will. You will fight each warrior, against each other, one by one, until only two remain standing. Then those two will face each other. The winner claims the right to marry my daughter." The crowd erupted in a cheer that reverberated through the settlement. This was what they had craved all along. Blood. Proof. A clear, undeniable victor. Silas looked at the 12 remaining warriors, their faces grim, their fists scarred, their eyes cold with the promise of violence. He looked at Kalen, now being carried away by his brothers, his face a contorted mask of pain and humiliation. Tomorrow, he would have to fight them all, and somehow, impossibly, survive. Part 3. The Final Stand. The drums began at dawn, a low, resonant thrumming that vibrated through the very earth, pulling the Shadowpeak people from their sleep. The entire settlement gathered in the central clearing, forming a vast, expectant circle in the pale dust, an arena forged by tradition and a thirst for resolution. 12 warriors stood ready, their faces etched with a grim determination. Kalen was absent, his powerful frame still recovering from the snake's venom, his legs swollen and useless. But 12 formidable men were more than enough to destroy one exhausted cowboy, a man whose body was already a testament to the brutal demands of the preceding trials. Silas's body screamed a protest with every movement. His hands, raw and barely functional, were wrapped in crude strips of cloth, barely holding the torn skin together. His ribs ached with a dull, persistent throb from the cliff climb. Bruises, purple and angry, mottled his arms and back, stark against his sun-darkened skin. He had survived 2 trials through sheer, unyielding desperation and an improbable flicker of luck. This third one, the test of will, would require a miracle he didn't believe in, a divine intervention he had long ago ceased to pray for. The first warrior stepped into the circle, his movements fluid, deadly. His name was Torvin, shorter than Kalen but built like a granite boulder, his fists scarred from a lifetime of brutal training and countless skirmishes. A predator's smile, thin and chilling, stretched across his lips as he looked at Silas the way a wolf eyes a wounded deer, savoring the inevitable. Chief Rokan raised his hand, his gaze sweeping across the tense faces of his people, then settling on the 2 men. His voice, heavy with ancestral weight, boomed across the clearing. Begin. Torvin charged, a blur of muscle and raw power. Silas tried to dodge, to pivot, but his exhausted legs, protesting every demand, betrayed him. The warrior's fist, a stone hammer, caught him squarely in the ribs, driving the air from his lungs in a painful gasp. He went down hard, hitting the unyielding earth with a sickening thud. Torvin didn't hesitate, following him down, raining blows that Silas could only partially block, his arms numb, his head ringing. The assembled crowd roared its approval, a primal sound of satisfaction that echoed off the crimson peaks. This was the conclusion they expected, the swift, brutal end to the outsider's improbable defiance. Then, through the surging cacophony of the crowd, a single voice, hoarse and strained, cut through the noise like a razor-sharp blade. Enough. Every head turned. Kalen stood at the very edge of the circle, leaning heavily on a walking stick carved from a gnarled branch, his face still gray with the lingering effects of the venom, his powerful body visibly weakened. Torvin paused, his fist raised, poised for another strike, his eyes wide with surprise. Every gaze, warrior and villager alike, was now fixed on the injured giant who had, until now, remained hidden from the public eye. Kalen limped forward, his movements slow and painful, but his voice, though still tinged with strain, grew in strength with each word. "This is not our way," he declared, his gaze sweeping over the gathered warriors, then settling on Chief Rokan. "Our trials test strength, courage, and will. He has shown all 3. Kalen let his words hang in the air, allowing their weight to settle on the uneasy silence. "Yesterday, in the canyon of dead trees, I tried to kill him." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The warriors exchanged shocked glances, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and dawning comprehension. "I tracked him like prey," Kalen continued, his voice raw with a surprising honesty. "Planned to leave his body for the animals, to let the canyon claim him forever. But when I fell, when the snake's poison was burning through me, shutting down my body, he didn't leave." Kalen's eyes met Silas's, and for the first time, there was no hate, no malice, only a stark, undeniable truth. "He saved me, carried me out of that place when he could have watched me die, when he should have watched me die." Murmurs, hushed and confused, rippled through the crowd. Torvin slowly lowered his fist, a profound confusion clouding his battle-hardened face. Kalen looked at Silas again, and this time, something profound passed between them. Not friendship, perhaps, not yet, but a powerful, grudging recognition, a shared understanding forged in the crucible of near death. "I am the strongest warrior here," Kalen continued, his voice ringing with a newfound conviction, echoing with the lingering pride of his tribe. "The fastest, the most skilled in combat, every woman should want me." He paused, allowing the truth of his statement to resonate, then delivered the unexpected blow. "But strength without honor is nothing. Power without compassion is weakness dressed in muscle." He turned to face the other warriors, his gaze unwavering, challenging each one. "We tested his body and found it wanting. We tested his courage and found it boundless. We tested his will, and discovered it cannot be broken. He gestured toward Silas, still on his knees in the dust, bloodied and battered but unbroken. Perhaps the question is not whether he is worthy of her. Perhaps the question is whether we, the Shadowpeak, are worthy to stand beside time's him asterisk. The silence that followed was absolute, deeper and more profound than any that had come before. It was the silence of a world shifting on its axis, of old beliefs being questioned, of a new truth dawning. Chief Rokan stepped into the circle, his weathered face, once unreadable, now carrying a hint of awe, of deep consideration. He walked directly to where Silas knelt in the dust, breathing hard, blood on his lips, his gaze still fixed on Kalen, his improbable savior. The chief studied Silas for a long, intense moment, his eyes searching, assessing, finally seeing past the surface to the man within. "My daughter saw something in you that I did not," Chief Rokan said quietly, his voice carrying clearly to every corner of the silent clearing. "She saw past the surface to what lives beneath. I asked you to prove your strength, but you proved something more valuable. You proved your heart." He extended his hand, calloused and strong, to Silas. "Rise. The trials are complete." Silas took the offered hand, his own trembling slightly, and pushed himself to his feet, swaying as the world tilted and then settled. The circle of warriors, who had moments before been ready to tear him apart, parted, creating a path, and through them, Elara walked. She wore the same soft white deerskin, intricately decorated with polished obsidian beads, her long, midnight hair woven with eagle feathers. Her face was painted with crimson ochre in sacred patterns, but her eyes, dark and fathomless, were only for him. She stopped before Silas, her presence a quiet strength in the heart of the clearing, and placed her hand over his heart, a gentle, anchoring touch. "I chose you," she said simply, her voice clear and unwavering, cutting through the lingering tension. "Not because you were strongest, but because you were true." Chief Rokan turned to the gathered tribe, his gaze commanding their attention, his voice ringing with the finality of his decision. "Elara has made her choice. The trials have proven his worth. Any who object must speak now, or forever hold their peace." No one spoke. Not a single voice rose in protest. Even the warriors who had wanted to destroy Silas, whose faces had burned with rage and resentment, remained silent, their expressions softened by the unexpected truth Kalen had revealed. Kalen himself, leaning heavily on his walking stick, nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement, if not yet of full friendship. It was a silent acceptance, a grudging respect earned not through combat, but through a deeper, more profound display of character. The wedding ceremony happened that very evening, under a vast, inky sky painted with 1,000,000 indifferent stars. It was simple, traditional, binding. When Chief Rokan joined their hands, Silas felt the overwhelming weight of everything that had brought him to this impossible moment. The years of loneliness, the countless scars both visible and unseen, the endless grinding pain of a life lived on the fringes. All of it had been a winding, arduous path, leading him here, to this woman, to this family, to this unexpected home. 3 months later, Silas and Elara built a small, sturdy house on the borderland between his small, forgotten ranch and the vibrant Shadowpeak settlement. It was a place that belonged to both worlds and to neither, a bridge spanning 2 disparate lives. Elara patiently taught him her ancient language, its guttural sounds and intricate rhythms slowly becoming familiar on his tongue. He, in turn, taught her about the nuances of cattle and the stubborn spirit of horses, about the subtle signs of a coming storm on the vast plains. Kalen visited sometimes, his limp gradually fading, bringing news and stories from the tribe, his presence a silent testament to the bond that had formed between them. The warrior never apologized for trying to kill him, but he never needed to. His presence, his quiet acceptance, spoke what words could not. On cold nights, Silas would sit on the porch of their small house, a warm blanket draped over his shoulders, and remember the day 13 warriors had fought for Elara's hand. He would remember her slender finger, trembling slightly, then pointing directly at him, a solitary outsider. He remembered choosing to accept something impossible, choosing to step into a life he never imagined. And beside him, Elara would smile, her hand finding his scarred, calloused palm, tracing the old burns that told a story of loss and survival. Together, they would watch the moon rise, casting long, silver shadows over the land that had witnessed the strangest, most beautiful truth of all, that sometimes the weakest man wins, not by being the strongest, but by being brave enough to suffer for others, to keep going when all hope seemed lost, and to prove, against all odds, the boundless strength of a true heart. Part 4. A Shared Horizon. The wedding ceremony happened that very evening, under a vast, inky sky painted with 1,000,000 indifferent stars. The sun had long since dipped below the crimson peaks, leaving behind only a faint, lingering blush on the western horizon, but the central clearing was alive with the soft glow of numerous torches and a crackling central fire. The air, cool and crisp, carried the scent of sage and pine, mingling with the aroma of roasted meat and the quiet anticipation of the Shadowpeak people. It was simple, traditional, binding, steeped in the ancient rhythms of a culture Silas had only ever observed from a distance, a ceremony he never in his wildest dreams imagined himself to be a part of. Elara stood before him, ethereal in her white deerskin, the polished obsidian beads gleaming in the firelight. Her face, still painted with crimson ochre, seemed softer now, a serenity settling over her features that had been absent in the tension of the trials. Her dark eyes, those fathomless depths that had first snared his attention, now held a profound, quiet joy. Silas, still battered and bruised, but no longer broken, felt the weight of her gaze settle upon him, an anchor in the swirling current of this impossible moment. Chief Rokan, his weathered face now entirely devoid of anger or disbelief, stood before them. His voice, once a thundering command, was low and resonant as he spoke of ancestors, of the sacred bond between man and woman, of the intertwining of two spirits. He spoke in their native tongue, a language still mostly alien to Silas. But Elara's presence, the warmth of the fire, the hushed reverence of the crowd, transcended words. He understood the essence, the profound gravity of the promises being made, the sacred covenant being forged. Then, with a gesture both ancient and powerful, Chief Rokan took Silas's hand, calloused and still stinging with fresh cuts from the trials, and gently, deliberately, joined it with Elara's. Her fingers, cool and delicate against his own, sent a jolt through him, a connection that felt as old as the mountains themselves. In that moment, a cascade of memories, a lifetime of solitary hardship, washed over Silas. The years of loneliness, the countless scars both visible and unseen, the endless, grinding pain of a life lived on the fringes, always outside, always an observer, all of it had been a winding, arduous path leading him here. To this woman, to this family, to this utterly unexpected home. He felt a lump form in his throat, a raw ache behind his eyes that he fought to control. This was not merely the end of a harrowing ordeal. It was the beginning of everything he had never dared to hope for. A low collective murmur of acceptance, of celebration, rose from the assembled tribe. Even Kalen, his legs still bandaged and his face pale, watched from the edge of the circle, a flicker of something akin to peace in his usually fierce eyes. He did not smile, but the hard line of his jaw had softened, a grudging respect now etched into his features. The barrier between Silas and this ancient world, so formidable just days ago, had begun to crumble, replaced by a delicate, nascent bridge of understanding. 3 months later, the Crimson Peak stood guard over a landscape transformed by the shifting seasons. The vibrant greens of summer had begun their slow retreat, giving way to the rich golds and fiery reds of autumn. On the borderland between Silas's small, forgotten ranch and the vibrant Shadowpeak settlement, a small, sturdy house now stood. It was built of rough-hewn timber and local stone, a place that belonged to both worlds and to neither, a physical manifestation of the bridge spanning 2 disparate lives. Silas, with help from some of the Shadowpeak men, Kalen included, his limp almost entirely gone, had poured his heart and sweat into its construction. Each nail hammered a testament to his new commitment, each stone laid a foundation for the future. Life settled into a rhythm, both familiar and profoundly new. Elara patiently taught Silas her ancient language. Its guttural sounds and intricate rhythms, once a bewildering cacophony, slowly became familiar on his tongue. He stumbled over pronunciations, often eliciting gentle laughter from her, but he persevered, driven by a deep desire to truly understand her world, to bridge the chasm of communication that had once separated them. He learned the subtle inflections, the nuanced meanings, the poetic beauty woven into every phrase, and with it, he began to understand the soul of her people. He, in turn, taught her about the nuances of cattle, about their stubborn spirit and their predictable habits. He showed her how to mend fences, how to read the subtle signs of a coming storm on the vast plains, how to gentle a wild horse with patience and understanding, rather than force. Elara, with her innate connection to the natural world, absorbed his lessons with keen intelligence, her curiosity boundless. She spoke of his cows as if they were ancient spirits, of his horses as creatures of raw, untamed magic, finding beauty and meaning in the mundane tasks that had once defined Silas's solitary existence. Kalen visited sometimes, not as frequently as Elara's other family members, but often enough. His limp, as predicted, had gradually faded, leaving only a slight stiffness as a reminder of the rattlesnake's venom. He would bring news and stories from the tribe, updates on the hunts, whispers of distant plains riders, insights into the changing moods of the chief. His presence in their small home was a silent testament to the bond that had formed between him and Silas, an unspoken acknowledgement of the profound shift that had occurred. The warrior never apologized for trying to kill him, but he never needed to. His visits, his quiet acceptance, his occasional, almost imperceptible nod of respect, these spoke what words could not. Theirs was a friendship forged in fire and venom, an unlikely alliance born from the most brutal of circumstances. On cold nights, when the wind howled down from the Crimson Peaks, and the fire crackled warmly in their hearth, Silas would often sit on the porch of their small house, a warm blanket draped over his shoulders. He would remember the day 13 formidable warriors had fought for Elara's hand, their muscles gleaming, their intentions clear. He would remember her slender finger, trembling slightly, then rising slowly, moving past them all, pointing directly at him, a solitary outsider. He remembered the raw terror, the disbelief, the absolute certainty that his life was about to end. And he remembered choosing to accept something impossible, choosing to step into a life he never imagined, a life that promised both peril and a profound sense of belonging. Beside him, Elara would smile, her hand finding his scarred, calloused palm. Her fingers, so gentle and knowing, would trace the old burns that crisscrossed his skin, scars that told a story of loss and survival, of a barn consumed by fire and a family lost to its flames. She knew the stories now, had heard them from his own lips on quiet evenings. She understood the deeper meaning of those scars, not as a mark of failure, but as a testament to an unyielding spirit. Together, they would watch the moon rise, a colossal, silver disk ascending above the jagged peaks, casting long, ethereal shadows over the land. It was the same land that had witnessed the fury of the trials, the desperation of the climb, the chilling embrace of the canyon of dead trees, and the unexpected, improbable act of compassion. It was the land that had borne witness to the strangest, most beautiful truth of all, that sometimes the weakest man wins, not by being the strongest, not by wielding the sharpest blade or possessing the most fearsome roar, but by being brave enough to suffer for others, to keep going when all hope seemed lost, and to prove, against all odds, the boundless, undeniable strength of a true heart. Their story, once a whisper of impossibility, had become a song of enduring truth, carried on the wind through the valleys and over the towering peaks, a testament to love found where it was least expected, and honor revealed in the most unlikely of heroes. Part 5. Echoes of a True Heart. The wind, that ancient storyteller of the crimson peaks, whispers now of a truth profound and undeniable. It carries not just the scent of pine and sage, not just the dust of the valley floor, but the echoes of a journey that defied all expectation, a love that blossomed in the heart of conflict, and a new beginning forged in the crucible of tradition and will. The tale of Silas and Elara is more than just a saga of survival. It is a testament to the unexpected pathways destiny carves, a powerful reminder that true strength often manifests in forms unrecognizable to the conventional eye. We witnessed the clash of worlds, the solitary cowboy, an outsider clinging to the fringes, and the proud, unyielding Shadowpeak tribe, rooted in their ancient ways. We saw Elara's audacious choice, a single, trembling finger pointing not to the mightiest warrior, but to the man whose quiet courage had gone unseen. And in that moment, the very fabric of their world, rigid and defined by generations of tradition, began to shift. It was a choice born of an insight deeper than physical prowess, a recognition of a spirit that resonated with hers beyond the superficial displays of power. Silas, battered and bruised, burdened by his own history of loss and loneliness, stepped into an arena where his very presence was an affront. He faced trials designed to break him, to expose what Kalen and the other 13 warriors perceived as his inherent weakness. Yet, through sheer, unyielding desperation, through a resilience forged in a life of hardship, and an unwavering, quiet compassion he endured, he climbed the unforgiving cliffs, his burned hands bleeding, his body screaming for surrender, driven only by the silent gaze of the woman who had chosen him. He ventured into the chilling embrace of the canyon of dead trees, unarmed, facing not just the unseen predators of the wild, but the very real, murderous intent of the formidable Kalen. And in that place of shadows and decay, he made a choice that transcended mere survival. He saved the man who sought to destroy him. This was the pivotal turning point, the moment when the chief, and indeed the entire Shadowpeak tribe, were forced to confront a truth more complex than their traditions had prepared them for. Kalen's admission, his grudging, raw confession of Silas's unexpected compassion, shattered the illusions of strength that had defined their world. It was a moment of profound revelation, not just for the tribe, but for Kalen himself, as he confronted the true meaning of honor. Strength without honor is nothing. Power without compassion is weakness dressed in muscle. These words, spoken by the very man who embodied the tribe's fierce might, were not merely an observation, they were a seismic shift in understanding. This narrative, then, becomes a beacon, illuminating the profound philosophy that sometimes the weakest man wins. It's a challenge to our conventional notions of power. It's not about the heft of a weapon, the bulge of a muscle, or the roar of defiance. It is about the boundless strength of a true heart. It's the courage to suffer for something that cannot repay you, the unwavering spirit that keeps going when no one is watching to offer praise. It is the quiet, insistent will to choose life, to choose compassion, even in the face of death. Silas, the outsider, the scarred, the seemingly weak, embodied these truths, and in doing so, he not only won Elara's hand, but carved a place for himself in the heart of a people who had initially deemed him unworthy. His journey reminds us that the battle scars we carry, whether visible on our hands or etched deep within our souls, are not marks of failure, but testaments to our enduring spirit. They tell a story of having faced the inferno and chosen to keep fighting, to keep saving, to keep living. It is a story that resonates far beyond the rugged frontier, echoing in the quiet moments of our own lives when we are called to persevere, to show kindness, to stand firm in our convictions when the world around us demands conformity. Elara's vision, her ability to see past the surface to what truly lives beneath, serves as a powerful testament to the wisdom that resides in looking beyond the obvious, beyond the expected. She saw in Silas not weakness, but an unyielding human strength that the most formidable warriors lacked. Her choice was not an act of rebellion, but an act of profound truth, revealing that the qualities most valuable in a life partner, and indeed in any leader or member of a community, are often those least celebrated in a world obsessed with outward displays of power. Their shared life on the borderland, a bridge between two worlds, becomes a living symbol of harmony and understanding. Elara teaching Silas her ancient language, a pathway to her soul and the soul of her people. Silas teaching her of the plains, of the animals, of the wisdom of the land. Kalen's visits, his silent acceptance, are the final, most poignant evidence of the deep, irreversible transformation that unfolded. It is a world where an unlikely alliance, born from the most brutal of circumstances, blossoms into respect, and perhaps even friendship. This narrative of Silas and Elara, of the Shadowpeak, and the crimson land they call home, is a powerful reminder that history is not just a chronicle of kings and conquerors, but a rich tapestry woven with the threads of individual courage, unexpected compassion, and the quiet triumphs of the human spirit. It is a story that compels us to look closer, to listen deeper, to question our preconceived notions of strength and worthiness. If the echoes of Silas's defiant spirit, the quiet strength of Elara's conviction, and the stark wisdom of Kalen's transformation have stirred a chord deep within your own soul, then know that this vast, untamed frontier of human experience holds countless other narratives, equally profound, equally unforgettable. The world is rich with tales of unexpected heroes, of courage found in the most unlikely of places, and of destinies colliding in ways that defy all logic. We invite you to continue this journey of discovery with us. If this story has resonated, if it has illuminated a truth, if it has inspired you to see the world with new eyes, then embark with us on more such adventures. Click the video on your screen now to delve into another unforgettable tale from the frontier, where the human spirit is tested, where courage and destiny intertwine, and where the most profound truths are often revealed in the most dramatic of circumstances. Do not let these stories fade into the whispers of time. Your engagement is the lifeblood of this endeavor. We humbly ask you to subscribe to our channel, to join a growing community that cherishes these narratives, that seeks to understand the deeper currents of humanity's past, and that believes in the enduring power of a good story. By subscribing, you ensure that these tales of strength, resilience, and unexpected heroism continue to be brought to life, reaching those who yearn for narratives that challenge, inspire, and remind us of our shared human journey. And if you feel moved to support our mission further, if you believe in the importance of preserving and sharing these profound sagas, consider contributing through a super chat. Your generous contributions are more than just a donation. They are an investment in the continuation of powerful storytelling, enabling us to unearth, craft, and share more narratives that challenge our perceptions and ignite our imaginations. Your support means everything to us, allowing us to keep bringing you more stories like these. Stories that celebrate the boundless, undeniable strength of a true heart. So, let the moon rise, casting its long, silver shadows over a land forever changed. And let the story of Silas and Elara, a song of enduring truth, be carried on the wind, through the valleys, and over the towering peaks, a timeless testament to love found where it was least expected, and honor revealed in the most unlikely of heroes. The dust of Shadowpeak has long settled, but the story of the Apache Maiden and the Cowboy still rides on the wind. It reminds us that real courage isn't in victory, it's in compassion. That love, once found, can bridge even the wildest frontier. In this land of silence and storms, hearts still remember their names, and so does Old West Stories. Subscribe and ride with us again, where every scar tells a story worth remembering.